This is TWiT.
Before we move off the privacy topic here, you personally, Tom, had some brush with the federal government wishing to protect your privacy in the context of your resignation from your position as U.S. Attorney. Maybe it would be helpful for you to describe. You alluded earlier that you had held the position of U.S. Attorney for Maine earlier on under the Carter administration. For folks who aren't terribly familiar with how people get that job and keep that job, maybe you could start from square one and describe the political appointment process and what happens when we have a change in administration.
Okay. Well, more recently, as I was terminated, I had a friend say, "Gee whiz, it's too bad you have to lose your job because of politics." And my answer was, well, that's kind of how I got the job in the first place, was a little bit of politics being involved. But every person who is appointed to this position, and there are 93 United States attorneys. Many states have one, and some of the largest states like California have, and Texas and Florida have as many as 3 or 4 United States attorneys divided up into districts. But generally speaking, when there is a change in administration, you expect that your term is going to end, even if it's the same party, because the president who is coming in has a right to appoint the people that he or she would feel would be appropriate for the job. Most often it is when there is a change in political party. 35 years ago when that happened, when Reagan defeated Carter, I had been there a short time, but I knew that there was going to be a change. And not long after the inauguration, I did submit my resignation. And one of the options we were given was to submit your resignation effective on the appointment of a successor. And that's what I did, and I was able to stay until about mid-August. A new person was appointed, whom I knew very well. And when he got sworn in, I left. But it led to a smooth transition. The office was a lot smaller then. But I was able to work with the people in the office and plan for moving the cases on with a new person as United States Attorney. And the United States Attorney is the chief federal law enforcement officer in the state. Not that the U.S. Attorney or even the assistants are going out doing investigations, but we oversee policy and procedure. And each administration is responsible for perhaps bringing in their own particular policies regarding certain issues. And when the opportunity came more recently after President Obama was sworn in, I was one of more than a dozen people who were interviewed for the job. I was one of 4 people whose names were sent to Washington for consideration. I was fortunate enough to be selected, and then you go through a vetting process, interviews. But from the initial interview until I was actually sworn in was about 17 months. And Maine did not have a Democratic senator at the time, and the states with Democratic senators were generally getting taken care of ahead of time. But I was about in the middle of the pack as far as the numbers are concerned. But once I got there, some of the things were very familiar, but mostly because of technology, the actual prosecution of cases and the investigation of cases had changed so much. And then what happened this time, the United States attorneys, had the choice of, for a while, whether we wanted to stay or leave. Approximately half of the United States attorneys had resigned and left to go into other positions. Some went into teaching, some into private practice. Either before or shortly after the inauguration. there were about half of us who, having been told that we would have the opportunity to stay until a person was named and approved to succeed us, that we decided that we would do that because in my personal case, I thought it would help the transition. I would be able to finish up some of the cases that the office was working on, and but then eventually a new U.S. attorney would come in, and perhaps there'd be some changes in policy and procedures. And then it was completely unexpected that we would be terminated so abruptly. I actually was on vacation with my family in Florida, and they got a phone call saying, we expect your resignation by midnight tonight. I didn't get it to them until the following week because they wanted it mailed. I didn't have access to my computer or printer, and I was terminated anyway, so it really didn't matter when the actual letter went in. And but what happened after that, I think it was about mid-May, the USA Today and some of its subsidiary newspapers were seeking to get a copy of the letters that we sent in. I don't know if I don't know specifically what they were looking for. Maybe they were hoping for some pithy remarks that people made about the president of the administration. But the Department of Justice would not release the letters, saying that there was too much personal information. Letters of resignation were personal. And that was really a surprise to, I think, many of us, and certainly the ones that I talked to, who my letter said, basically, I resign as instructed. It was a pleasure to serve under the Presidents Carter, Reagan, and especially Obama, and I resigned. I do know another U.S. attorney that I talked to expressed a surprise for the time and did mention that it impeded an orderly transition. But the Justice Department would not release them, saying there was too much personal information in there. I was eventually contacted by a reporter from the Burlington, Vermont Free Press, which is a subsidiary of USA Today, asking if he could get a copy of my letter. And I said, yes. And I sent him a copy, as did another U.S. attorney. And the only thing I did is I deleted my personal phone number, personal email, and home address, more for security reasons than privacy. But, I mean, it was public knowledge that I had been let go. And, you know, every U.S. attorney knows that when you are originally appointed, you don't have the job for forever or going into new administrations. Virtually all of the U.S. attorneys were allowed to stay in when President Obama was reelected, but that's kind of the practice. And it can vary from administration to administration. And if the present administration had asked me and other U.S. attorneys to please resign by the day of the inauguration on January 20th, we would have expected that. What happened here was, having been led to believe we would be able to stay for a while and help on the transition, the suddenness was very strange. And then these newspapers, they have a FOIA request into the Justice Department that I understand has not yet been acted on, and it may be leading to litigation. Then that's pretty much what's happened. So in 46 United States Attorney's offices, the person who had been acting as the first assistant became the acting United States Attorney. So it was the suddenness of it that really surprised everybody.